We were visiting some friends the other day, and our friends are a couple. They're around 80 years old and are some of the most hardworking and kind people you'd ever meet. They are who I want to be when I grow up. And when we got to their house, he was outside doing some yard work and she was working on something inside, and he immediately greeted us and started telling us about how he just finished making a big batch of pancakes that he makes once a week, these oatmeal raisin pancakes that he then divvies up and has 1 or 2 every day throughout the week, and how his wife makes a big pot of soup once a week that they then have for lunch, and the soup is filled with vegetables that they grew and preserved from their garden. And I was just so inspired and encouraged by their lifestyle and their rhythms and their routines, and how they were clearly leading to this just life of joy, but also longevity. And so I thought I would bring you along for a week at our house in our life of showing kind of what some of those rhythms and routines are for us and what a week of meals looks like in our house.
Yummy.
Good stuff. So we just finished harvesting all of our produce. We got over 1,000 pounds of produce from our gardens, a lot of storage crops, potatoes, butternut squash, sweet potatoes, carrots, onions, garlic, all of those good things. So we are stocked with produce. We haven't been to the grocery store in a couple of months now, since the middle of September. Our freezers are filled with meat from a cow that we had processed and from chickens. And so I'm gonna show you how we turn that into meals that we have kind of on a regular basis. So one of our rhythms is every weekend I pull out a few cuts of meat, and that's what we're gonna have for meals throughout the week. I am not someone who meal plans religiously. I generally have a sense of the sort of meals that we're gonna eat, but I don't usually come up with an exact plan until more of game time, when I figure out kind of what our day's looking like and what people feel like and just kind of what's gonna make sense in our world. So I have kind of a rough, I call it a flexible meal plan. I have kind of a rough idea, but not anything written down, and things kind of ebb and flow just depending on how our week goes. But the one thing I do is I take out a few cuts of meat over the weekend. So I took out a whole chicken, a couple pounds of ground beef, and some smoked ham that we had in the freezer. And so those are the things that I'm gonna be using mainly for our meals throughout the week. And today is Monday, and every Monday my routine is to slow cook a whole chicken. I do this by putting a whole chicken in our Dutch oven or slow cooker. I fill it about 2/3 to 3/4 of the way with water. Add a little splash of apple cider vinegar. That just helps pull some of the minerals out of the bones of the chicken to make the broth. That's why I fill it with water. Add some salt to it. I put it in the slow cooker and I have it cook all day. And so then before we eat that chicken for dinner, I scoop out all that delicious, flavorful broth, put that in jars that we then have for meals throughout the week. We eat chicken for dinner on Mondays, and then whatever meat is left, I pull that off the bone that then we're gonna use for meals throughout the week, other meals that we can incorporate. And so that's our plan for today. Some of the other things I'm gonna be doing, so I need to figure out some sort of side that we're gonna have with our chicken. But since I do have a little extra time this afternoon, I wanna do some baking. And so something that I try to do is, because we have so much harvested and preserved away, I try to pretty much in every meal that we're making, even in baking, incorporate that preserved food in what we have. Because otherwise we get to the spring and we still have, you know, tons of jars of peach sauce and frozen fruit in our freezers. And so kind of in everything that I make, I want to figure out how can I incorporate these things into our meals. And so I'm going to make a couple loaves of, it's a recipe for applesauce bread, but I use peach sauce because our peaches were abundant this summer and we have tons of peach sauce at our disposal. So I'm going to make this peach sauce bread, but you can make it with applesauce. I'm going to make a couple loaves of that, one that we'll probably eat for as a side / dessert with our chicken for dinner, and then the other one that I'm gonna stick in the freezer. Mondays tend to be one of our freest day on the calendar. We don't have any activities in the evenings, and so if it's possible, I like to prep meals ahead on Mondays that we'll then eat on Tuesdays, because Tuesdays our daughter has ballet, and so we're always kind of running around a bit. All of that happens right around dinner time, and so it's just easier if I have something prepped and ready to go. So I'm gonna make this ham and egg and cheese strata. It's basically a, kind of like I think of it as a French toast casserole, except for a savory version. And every week we barter a loaf of bread with some friends, and so we get this loaf of sourdough bread, and I need to use it. We haven't used it yet this week. It's sitting on our counter looking to be eaten, and so I'm gonna turn this sourdough bread into this ham and cheese strata. And this is one of the most favorite meals in our house. It's something that I love to make. It's perfect for a Christmas morning sort of breakfast because you can make it all in advance. It's simple, it's basic, but it's so delicious. The basic ingredients are just chopped up cubed bread. You can use any kind of bread. I like to use sourdough in this. You add some milk, some eggs, some diced ham, or you could use bacon or even sausage. I like to throw in there some sauteed onion and garlic just to use some of the things that we have harvested. And then a bunch of cheese. You mix it all together. You let it sit overnight, just like overnight baked French toast. You let it sit overnight in the fridge, and then the next day, all you need to do, and that allows the liquid to get soaked into that bread, and then the next day, all you need to do is sprinkle some more cheese on top, sprinkle some more ham if you want to, bake it in the oven, and you're ready to go. I typically prepare one kind of main meal for the day, whether we eat that for lunch or for dinner. And then breakfast is basically always eggs in our house. So I make my eggs, Jim makes his own eggs, and then our 7 and 9-year-old can tag team making eggs for our kids. We have sides like yogurt or dates and prunes our kids like to have with their eggs. Jim usually has a little homemade granola. I like to make carrot salad, but whatever it is, eggs are always kind of the base of that, and that works really well because it's just one meal throughout the day that I don't think about. It just happens. Everyone knows the routine, everyone knows what to do, and everyone does it, and it just works out easily. I think just anything that you can do as a mom to take away that mental load of needing to think through those things really, really helps. And so I really appreciate that breakfast is one of those meals that kind of just happens without any thinking. For lunch or dinner, just depending on what our day looks like and whether we're having kind of that big made meal for lunch or for dinner, the other meal is typically leftovers. So when I'm cooking, I like to always make one meal stretch into at least 2 meals, sometimes 3 meals that it will feed us. And so that way we pretty much always have leftovers in the fridge. And so usually one of our meals is kind of whatever we're making that day, and the other meal is some sort of leftovers from the day before. So today we had this leftover soup that I made over the weekend. I made some chocolate milk just to add some fun, something different to it, just to make it a little more fun and special for our family. But besides that, it's just something easy that I can just heat up. You guys know that I love DIY and homemade everything, and my sweet husband Jim has put up with a lot of experiments over the years, and thankfully most of them have worked really well. But about a year ago he came to me and said, you know that homemade deodorant that you've been making? Yeah, it's not always cutting it. And so I was on the hunt for an aluminum-free deodorant that worked really well, and I found Wild. And you guys, this stuff has been awesome. So we were at a Homestead conference this summer. It was the first time we were at a conference like this, and we were invited to be presenters. And so we were up on stage, and it was like a 95-degree June day. And after that weekend, Jim came back and he was sold on this deodorant. He's like, I didn't smell all weekend. And another thing that I love about Wild deodorant is that the case is reusable. So all you need to do is get the refills and put them in, and when you finish, you just get another refill and pop it in, but the case never needs to go into the garbage. So right now, Wild is having their best sale of the year for a limited time. You can get 33% off everything using code FROMSCRATCH33. So I'll put the link in the description below so you can go check them out. You know you're 6 weeks old today. You're 6 weeks old.
Gotcha, buddy.
All right, so per our kids' request, we decided to go with roasted potatoes for dinner. So I'm gonna do a mixture of Adirondack Blues, which is this lovely purple potato, and then Corollas, which are a yellow potato. These are 2 potatoes that are gonna get soft most quickly, that don't store as well. So this is what we're using pretty much exclusively right now. I'm gonna use a crinkle cutter to cut them. I just think adding that little fun flair of crinkle cutting your fries instead of just cubing them or turning them into fries just makes it all the more fun. So I'm just cutting them with the crinkle cutter, laying them in a single layer on a baking sheet with some coconut oil on it, sprinkling some salt, maybe some other seasonings on there, and that's it for that. And then while these are baking, I'll get the chicken ready. So I add the water directly to the chicken to help just give it that rich, nutrient-dense broth while I'm cooking it, to avoid the extra step of, after I debone the chicken, to have to make the broth as a separate step. Plus, when it has all the meat and all the good stuff on there, you really get so much of a richer, nutrient-rich, and just tastier broth, in my opinion, and it saves a step. So I'm gonna go ahead and scoop the broth, separate that from the chicken, and then I like to just put the chicken back into the broiler to broil it, and then that helps get that skin nice and crispy and delicious.
I love potatoes. Yeah, you make them crinkly. Be happy, 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 happy. Two.
All right, who wants some chicken?
No. That's my delicious. It is. It's purple, Mommy. It's done to purple.
I'm glad you like it.
Mine's purple.
It is purple. All right, so it is Tuesday, and I have figured out my game plan for today. So the ham and cheese strata that I prepared yesterday, I'm actually gonna make that for lunch today, because sometimes I don't like to make complicated things for lunch because we do our homeschooling stuff, so I don't have a ton of time, but this is really easy. All I need to do is sprinkle some cheese on top, throw some ham on there. It bakes in the oven for about 45 minutes, and so that's gonna be really easy. I'm gonna go ahead and prep that now. And then for dinner with ballet and everything else we have going on, we do have some leftover pizza that we had from this weekend. We always do a pizza night on, actually it's not a pizza night, it's usually Sunday after church for lunch is when we do our pizza, but we're gonna have leftover pizza for dinner tonight. And then this afternoon, my hope is to prep a couple things that we can have later in the week. So I'm gonna make, with the leftover chicken that we had yesterday from our whole chicken, I'm gonna turn it into a chicken, broccoli, potato, creamy casserole. It's one of our favorites. It's so good. It's just roasted potatoes with broccoli, and then you put a sauce that's a mixture of yogurt and mayo and sour cream, throw some cheese on top, add some garlic. It's really, really delicious. And so it's another great one that you can prep in advance and then just bake when you need it. And so I'm gonna prep that today. Actually, my plan is for Thursday because Thursday is just a really full day. I have some extra appointments and meetings in the afternoon, so I'm not gonna be able to spend a lot of time prepping dinner that day, and so I'm gonna make this today for that day. The other thing I'm hoping to make this afternoon is just to throw a couple butternut squash in the oven. I just slice them in half, take out the seeds, put them in the oven to cook them, and then you can just scoop out all the flesh and puree it, and then I'm gonna have that on hand for meals later in the week. I'm thinking that I'm gonna make a butternut squash soup, maybe use it for some baking. Butternut squash makes a great substitute for pumpkin and pretty much anything. And so just having that ready and on hand, that butternut squash, makes it so much easier to then turn it into a quick soup or use it in baking whenever I need it later in the week. So this is cheese that we got in bulk from Azure Standard. This is their mozzarella that we absolutely love. we kind of go back and forth between using their cheese, and then we also use our mozzarella and shredded cheddar. It's just been such a crazy summer that we haven't been able to keep up with cheese making as much as we have in the past, so we got some from Azure Standard, but they are a great option for bulk cheese as well. All right.
My favorite meal. My favorite meal is purple. Oh, pink. 1,500 scoops.
That looks
1,500
awesome.
scoops. That's a lot of scoops.
Okay. Oh, Hawk! Who's right there? Oh, I do see it. Oh, there's a big one. Oh, come on.
All right, it is Wednesday and it is taco day at our house. And this is something that I love about seasonal eating and seasonal cooking. So 2 months ago in September, if we were gonna have tacos, we would have had traditional tacos with meat. We had fresh lettuce, we had fresh tomatoes up the wazoo. So that's how we would have done our tacos. Fast forward, now that it's November and I don't have any more fresh tomatoes, we just chopped down all of our lettuce the other day. We don't have those things. And so how do we eat tacos using what seasonal produce we do have? And so today we're actually gonna be having sweet potato tacos, and I love these. It's so good, and it's so fun that you can just take what you have and use it to make a different variation of something that's absolutely delicious. And so in our sweet potato tacos, I just do ground beef, some onion and garlic, and some roasted sweet potatoes. I'm serving it with a coleslaw, and you can tell this is definitely our homegrown produce. You don't find this at this store, but we always start early in the season. I consider November kind of early in our storage season, using the smaller things that we grew, like this small carrot, because these are the ones that aren't gonna store as well as the bigger versions. And the same thing is true for potatoes or even this cabbage, right? It's kind of small, not the best looking, but it's still gonna make some delicious coleslaw. So these sweet potato tacos are what we're having for dinner. We just finished lunch and reading books. We read one of my favorite books, The Ox Cart Man. But we had the leftover ham and cheese strata for lunch. There wasn't quite half of it. There was a little less than half of it. So we supplemented that with hard-boiled eggs, which are something that we just always have on hand for meal add-ons or quick snacks. We always have plenty of milk and yogurt on hand to add if someone doesn't quite get enough with their lunch and they want something else. We can always have those things too. Coleslaw?
Oh, a little bit. Pick it up and go like this and hold it and take a big bite.
Sure.
But lean over and take a bite from the end, not the middle.
All right, it's Thursday and we are having this cheesy broccoli potato chicken casserole that I prepped the other day. Super easy. All I needed to do is sprinkle some cheese on top and bake it in the oven, which was great because today has been a super full day. I had a midwife appointment, which is kind of far away, and I met my sister for lunch. Jim held down the fort here. These guys had leftover sweet potato tacos for lunch. Our fridge was brimming with milk. Thimble has been producing so much milk these days, so Jim made some cheese, and it's just been a really full day. So it's really nice to have things that are ready to go, super easy, that I could just pop in the oven, especially on days like today. And I'm kind of embarrassed because we do this whole YouTube thing for a living and cooking videos, and look at the state of our oven mitts. It's kind of embarrassing to even show this on camera, but this is what it looks like. So what oven mitts do you use that are really, really good? Because we use them hard, and I feel like within just a couple months they look like this. And so what's something quality that's going to last? Please tell me all of your suggestions because we need them. All right. Look at these cheese stringers. There you go.
Cheese. Mmm, yummy.
Good stuff. There you go. Good. Hello, it's Friday, so we made it to Friday, and I am just sauteing some garlic and onion that I'm going to use in a creamy butternut squash soup that I'm going to make this afternoon. We always have our co-op, our homeschool co-op on Fridays, and so it's always just, it's a full day. It's a fun day for everyone, but it's also exhausting, and so we are all just feeling pretty tired this afternoon. I love that, so on Monday I made that apple bread that we had for dinner with our chicken, but I also froze a loaf of that, and so that was actually what our kids had for breakfast this morning. We have to get out the door really early for co-op on Fridays, so I love to have something made that is just, they really enjoy, as kind of a special treat that they can just, you know, cut up and eat really quickly and easily, and it's delicious. We love having eggs for breakfast, but I have noticed if you can just break it up even once or twice a week to have something different, it does just really help and kind of just give everyone a little break. And so I always try to do that on Fridays, so it's really nice to just have something that I can just pull out of the freezer and have. And then for lunch on Fridays on co-op day, I always try to pack some sort of like charcuterie board style thing, you know, sliced cheese and nuts and maybe dried fruit or sliced meat, or just kind of a combination of whatever I can scrounge up that's easy, that doesn't need to be heated, that we can just eat with our fingers, that's an easy kind of picnic style lunch. So that's what we did today, and then we're gonna have this soup for dinner, and then if I have the energy, I'm gonna make a pumpkin chocolate chip bars to serve with it. When you already have the butternut squash made in advance, it makes making this soup so easy. So all you're gonna do is throw that garlic and onions in the blender along with the pureed butternut squash that we did the other day, and then I'm throwing in some chicken broth. I mix that all together into a nice puree, put that in a pot, and I'm gonna add some cream, which I think just gives it the best creamy texture and delicious taste. And then I'm adding some nettle to this recipe. We harvest and preserve a ton of nettle in the spring, and so I love to just sprinkle it into any soup that we're making, just for the extra nutrients. It really doesn't add any flavor. And then I'm adding some salt and some diced ham, and that's basically it. It's a really easy and basic soup, but it's so good. I still had some of the butternut squash puree left, so I'm gonna make these pumpkin blondies. And this is a simple dump and go sort of recipe, which is totally my jam. So today I'm using a fresh ground flour in these, but you could also substitute an almond flour or an oat flour, and it's really good either way. But this is a basic recipe. It's just your pumpkin, your flour, and just other simple basic baking ingredients. Add some chocolate chips, and it's a crowd pleaser. We love this one. And we do have the full recipes for pretty much everything that we're making this whole week on our website. So I'll link all of those recipes in the description below. So there you have it. That's what a full week worth of meals looks like in our home, and how we use that food that we grew and harvested and preserved away to feed our family all week and really all year long. And so hopefully that gives you some inspiration for that seasonal eating, because friends, it's worth it. Same with the cabbage. This is a pretty sad looking head of cabbage, but it's gonna make some delicious, what am I making? Coleslaw. But it's gonna make some delicious coleslaw.